You are listening to Tech Vibe Pittsburgh. This is your front row seat to all things tech and innovation across the Pittsburgh region. I'm your host. I'm Jonathan Kersting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I keep telling stories about the great stuff happening here. And today is a story that I am so excited for us to jump into, because if you keep on listening, you're going to learn about Rivers of Steel, one of these really important organizations in Pittsburgh that's not just preserving our history and showing the importance of Pittsburgh, but it's also providing just like children out there and setting them forward. And they had this boat called the Explorer, which has kind of been a staple of Pittsburgh. It's one of its main things that really gets the kids going, gives great tours for people to learn about what's going on in Pittsburgh. And it actually needs a new propulsion system. And we're going to talk about that today with Captain Ryan O'Rourke of Rivers of Steel. So Ryan, Captain, thank you for hanging out with me today. I'm so excited to learn about what you guys are up to and what you do as well as a captain, because I think it's been about 30 years since I have last interviewed someone like you when I was piloting the Coast Guard cutter Osage down the Ohio River when I worked with the Sewickley Herald. So thanks for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This looks like a good time.
So first and foremost, let's just jump into what Rivers of Steel does and how the Explorer ties into that. And then I want to learn about your background.
A national heritage area, and it covers the southeastern or southwestern counties of Pennsylvania. We have 5 primary assets. Explorer is one of them. We also have the Boast building, which is where the Homestead Union headquarters were back with the Homestead Steel Strike. We have the Cherry Blast Furnaces up in Rankin, which is an old blast furnace that you can pour, and it's just this hulking behemoth of steel and iron that looks really crazy. And it's a great place to learn about industrial history, because that's where that stuff was made. We also have the Pump House, which is in the Homestead waterfront, and the W.A. Young and Sons machine shop down in Greene County. That's also a crazy place to visit. If you want to see old machine stuff, old belt-driven machinery, a forge, it's really fantastic to look at.
Oh, you're hitting on my inner Pittsburgh history nerdom right now. Let's stop this interview right now. Let's just go take some tours and have some fun.
All right, let's go.
So how long have you been with Rivers of Steel for?
Well, I joined Rivers of Steel in 2016, the same time that Explorer did. So Rivers of Steel, Explorer wasn't originally part of Rivers of Steel. Explorer was built in 2006 under RiverQuest, or some people might know the name Pittsburgh Voyager.
Yes.
So in 2016, Rivers of Steel acquired RiverQuest and the Explorer, and me with it.
And you with it. All right. You came with the boat.
Exactly. I came with the boat,
I love it. So you got to tell me, obviously, you're the captain of this boat, so you're piloting this thing and taking people tours and stuff. Like, what is it? What's a day like for you as the captain of the Explorer?
Well, it's fun. I can't imagine having a more fun job. The day starts with some pretty basic, once you get on board, you go through your safety checks. We have our big checklist of stuff. You go through the engine room, you go through the pilot house. I have my deckhands who help me with a lot of things. The captain's on a one-man team. So, we're all doing our parts to make sure the boat's safe, clean, ready for passengers. And then once we get people on board, that's when the fun stuff happens. That's when I get out and you actually get to go out in the rivers. It's really something. I am a firm believer, and there's a little bit of personal bias, of course.
Okay.
That there's no better way to see Pittsburgh than from the rivers.
I was going to say that. I think you get a perspective that is so unique that you can really not get unless you're on the water. You can get really up close to some of our infrastructure and some of our history and just see it in a way that you just can't do it by flying above it, driving around, or wherever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. The view from Mount Washington, spectacular. Coming in through the Fort Pitt Tunnel, spectacular. But if you want to see the entirety of Pittsburgh, you really got to get out on the rivers.
Yeah, that's why the Tech Council, we think Rivers of Steel and Explorer is such an asset to our region, because you provide people with that view that you just wouldn't get otherwise. And it makes us all appreciate Pittsburgh all the more. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. So how many tours do you guys do over the course of a year? I assume in the winter, it's not as much. How does it work? What's your schedule like?
Yeah, well, we definitely have a sailing season. We usually hibernate from late November through about, depending on the weather, usually mid-March, maybe early April.
Okay.
We start our seasons with school programs, and that's kind of our bread and butter. So
Gotcha.
we do public tours, but primarily our business involves getting kids on board, field trips with schools, and doing
Yeah.
science experiments on the boats. Very STEM based stuff,
Hmm.
and trying to give kids an appreciation and knowledge of our rivers and the environment in Pittsburgh and how important they are to Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. I can only imagine how many students have gone through and been inspired in one way or another because they got to spend an afternoon out on the water, like getting their hands dirty, for lack of a better term, doing experiments, even though our rivers are actually very clean. So they're not getting their hands dirty.
I am one of those kids, actually. Back in it was probably 1998.
Okay.
Before Explorer, whenever Pittsburgh Voyager had two Navy yard patrol vessels, the Discovery and the Voyager, I was this is one of those things that just kind of came to me as I was working on Explorer. I had this memory of, oh, wow, this all feels really familiar. And I remembered as a teenager, I was on one of the old boats that they had here doing the exact same programming that the kids are doing now, digging up in macroinvertebrates, sampling water chemistry. And I still remember that vividly. And it's just a great bit of serendipity that I am now here captaining the boat that's
awesome.
helping kids
Come on.
do that
I
same
couldn't
thing.
write that.
Right? Yeah, I know. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So were you in the Coast Guard or the Navy before taking this on? What was your background?
No. I had just entire background. I'm going to just another field entirely.
That's
Um,
fascinating.
And yeah, absolutely. And, just looking for a part-time job one day, RiverQuest had some availability for a volunteer. I said, that sounds like fun. I'll volunteer there for a little bit. Then they said, hey, we have some part-time deckhand positions open. You're looking for a job. And I said, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do that for a little bit. And then after working for about 3 years as a deckhand, they said, do you have any interest in being a captain?
No way.
I said, maybe. Who does that? Like, that's one Pittsburgh. You don't really think, you see the boats on the river, but you don't really, you think like, oh, if you're a captain, you go to the ocean, or you go to the coast. But being a captain on, in the rivers wasn't something that I had really thought about. And as I learned more about it, it sounded very interesting. And, having watched the captains that, on Explorer and on the other boats, I said, you know what? Yeah, actually, that sounds pretty cool. And I have been doing that ever since. So I've been a captain for about 15 years now.
Amazing. That's a great story. That's why we love telling stories here in Pittsburgh. Where else would I learn like how you got this job and how you're making a difference for so many people's lives by doing what you do? And you were influenced by it by the get-go. So that's really awesome. I think
Exactly. It's generational at this point.
absolutely 100%. So rumor has it, I mean, the Explorer's kind of getting up there in age a little bit, I suppose. And what's really cool is, I mean, maybe tell us a little bit about the history, but when this was built, it was built with some hybrid propulsion system, things that just weren't normally done back in the day, because you guys are trying to go for lack of a better term, some kind of like LEED type of certifications there, or LEED type of vibe, in order to keep, things as sustainable as possible. And now it's time for a refresh, I guess, on some of the systems. So maybe give me a little of this background and tell me what you guys are looking for.
Yeah. So we have to frame all of this back in circa 2006.
Yes.
So all this technology we're going to be talking about is turn of the century technology,
Which is crazy because that's 20 years old now. Just like, oh my gosh.
Right. So yeah, so not Carrie Furness turn of the century, but 20, so so back in 2006, RiverQuest, which was Pittsburgh Voyager, decided that the old wooden Navy boats were just getting to be too much maintenance. They were small. They wanted something sustainable for the future, something that could put more kids on board, because we were just inundated with schools trying to get on board, and we just could not support them all. We needed a new boat. And because RiverQuest was an environmentally based program, we wanted a vessel that reflected the same values.
Exactly. Makes sense.
And so we wanted it to be built to greens, not necessarily green standards, because those were just kind of evolving back then, but what green kind of meant: more sustainable stuff that was produced with less pollution, and that could operate in ways that would save us energy costs, things like that. And so,
That's a very forward-thinking design thought for back then, saying to ourselves, I mean, well, you could go out and say, well, we're going to find something and it's going to be better, it's more modern, but say, well, we're actually going to take it to the next level. It's pretty awesome. So like, especially when it comes to the propulsion systems and so forth within the boats. So if something was very different from that than what you would normally see on a similar vessel.
very much so. Nowadays we're so used to hybrid technology.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's in every other car on the road, and even in the maritime industry, hybrid technology is taking off. It's wonderful now. But back then, not so much. Diesel electric power has been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Since the locomotive days.
Exactly right.
Diesel
Yeah.
has been around forever. But in the maritime world, it's been a very slow adoption, mostly because of the tows and the commercial industry stuff. They love that raw power of just diesel engines, and it's entirely understandable.
For sure.
Explorer, however, has a diesel electric hybrid system, which means we have diesel engines, and we have battery packs, all of which are separated from the electric motors that drive the propulsion system.
Gotcha.
And so we can run one engine, we can run two engines, we can run two engines in our battery packs, we can run just our battery packs. There is a wide amount of versatility that that Explorer can operate on. And that lets me as a captain choose the most optimum way, depending on how, if we're flying upriver to, carry furnaces and we need all engines at full. Great. That's what we got to do. But if we're just going on a casual tour around Pittsburgh, nice and slow with the kids or the public, I can put one engine on and run that at optimal efficiency. And it's
Well,
great.
so I'm assuming over the life of the past 20 years, you've probably saved a lot of fuel and energy being able to maximize your efficiency along the way, which I think is pretty cool and a great way to kind of be that proving ground to show this type of technology can work well for your type of application.
Explorer was the first hybrid passenger vessel in the United States.
No way, back up. So that's like another Pittsburgh first.
Yes, it absolutely is. And that was one of the reasons why they wanted to do this, was because it was so novel. Again, there was some industry stuff was industrial towboats and push barges were
Surely.
were hybrid back then. It was still very slow, very new. But the passenger vessel, that was unique.
Pittsburgh first. I love it. That's why I love working out on these types of things. It just makes it so much fun. So now, 20 years later, I guess it's time for a refresh.
Yeah, unfortunately, 20 years later, 20 years is a long time for what is essentially a prototype system.
Yeah. Especially working in pretty harsh environments. I mean, when you're on the river, I mean, you're being exposed obviously to elements that aren't so kind to things.
Yeah, very much. This isn't salt water, so it's not the harshest environment possible. But there's no such thing as easy life on the rivers here.
No,
it's constantly beating us up with wind and rain and corrosion and all kind of stuff that just beats up boats, no matter where you are.
Exactly.
So our system Explorer was built in 2006, so we're approaching 20 years old. But the technology that they actually used to put on board was older than that.
Wow.
It was a Siemens system that was designed to be on electric buses and cars. And it worked fantastic for that purpose. And they said, let's try it on a maritime system. And they did. And we were one of the first vessels to have that installed. And it worked great for 20 years. But 20 years is a long time in technology. My goodness.
Oh my! I'm thinking the lead say just put a little of Moore's law on it.
Exactly. And we just, the parts aren't made anymore.
Right.
It's beyond legacy. Even finding somebody who understands the coding and the programming language. So the repairability and sustainability of Explorer going forward just is not there. We need to repower.
Okay. So basically now, are you looking for new solutions? What can we do at the Tech Council to help you? Because we want to make sure we can connect you guys to potential, solutions that are right here in Pittsburgh, people in Pittsburgh that can connect you out. Like, what is the next move so we can make sure the Explorer can go another 20 years?
Well, we're developing an RFP right now.
I love this. It's almost like giving a bit of a blank slate with some criteria to allow people to come up with the best solution that can really take this to the next level.
Right. And what we're really looking for is a company that can put these systems together for it. Both offer the individual systems and then put that system together for a full propulsion package. See, where are the motors that drive the boat? What about the engine that produces the power? The software that controls all of this stuff.
Interesting. And so what is your time frame to have the RP done and then to hopefully select somebody, and obviously to have this installed would probably take a bit of time, and then to get this thing back out on the rivers?
Yeah, we have a pretty aggressive timeline. We want to get this done, and so we'll hopefully have it out to everyone. The proposals back to us by June.
Excellent. Okay, I like it.
And after that, there'll be some development time for the actual plan to come in place, and we really want to get the boat fixed and back on the water by this time next year.
Good stuff. We're going to keep our fingers crossed. We're rooting for you, and anything the Tech Council can do to support that, we are there for you. That's what we love, telling these stories to get the word out there. I mean, Captain of Work, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me today. So much fun.
Yeah, this was fun. I appreciate the call.
Absolutely. Everybody, if you love content like this, just keep following. In case you forgot, this is Jonathan Kersting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and, of course, Tech Vibe Radio.